ANC spokesperson Pulemabe says that the ANC will never convene a meeting to discuss the utterances of an individual NEC member. He was speaking following the first ordinary virtual National Executive Committee meeting after the party's 110-year anniversary earlier this month. Mabe was referring to the tit-for-tat statements between the presidency and Tourism Minister Lindiwe Sisulu, related to an article that she penned earlier this month titled, "Hi Mzansi, have we seen justice?" Well, the article was criticized that it insulted the judiciary, and the disagreement is on whether Sisulu had indeed retracted a certain statement in this regard, as reported by the presidency. Well, the ANC is currently holding its Lekgotla together with alliance partners to discuss matters of importance affecting the country, including service delivery, unemployment and economic recovery.
What we are not going to be doing really, Cressida,
yes,
is to feed into a media narrative that suggests a spat. We do not believe that there was a public spat. We know that.
But it was a tit-for-tat, Mr. Mabe. You can't shy away from that. It was a tit-for-tat between the ANC president and a very high-ranking minister, Lindiwe Sisulu.
I'm going to leave the media to make its own interpretation of what would have happened out there.
There are some reports, Mr. Mabe. Some reports on calls by some ANC NEC officials for the minister to be disciplined. Has that come up as well?
No. If you have got people in the NEC who whisper things to you, it is not my job as the national spokesperson of the ANC to come and validate whispers. I don't do that. My job really is to communicate that which the organization has taken. There is no way that a self-respecting organization like the African National Congress will spend 2 days discussing an individual NEC member. We've got a lot of things. The people of South Africa are looking for jobs.
Political analyst and associate professor of public management and governance at the School of Government Studies, Barry Hanyane, joins us now via Zoom for more. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Peter, good evening to you. Good evening to your viewers.
All right. So what do you make of this statement by the ANC's national spokesperson? And I suppose this is a way not to have to deal with it, to suggest that it's beyond the party.
It seems like the way things have happened, Peter, are actually testing the capacity within the party to handle matters of this nature. And of course, if you go back to the immediate history within the party, there are few senior members who have traversed this path before in daring the president to either fire them or daring the party itself to provide disciplinary measures. And the worst case is that here is a person who comes from a respected political background in a form of a respected, political family in the form of the Sisulus, who would then say to the party, if you have what it takes, bring it on. I'm standing by my words. And yes, I have the ability in me to contradict you publicly on matters of pronouncements that otherwise may very well expose you in terms of courage, in terms of posture. But all of this, at the end of the day, unfortunately, brings some measure of disrepute both to the party, let alone to the executive as well.
Is this something that the party cannot ignore? I mean, they might say this is a government issue, this is for the president to deal with one of his ministers, but in real terms, actually, people look at this spat and they think of the ANC.
Peter, the party cannot afford to ignore. Before members join a party, they are individuals themselves with independent thinking, with independent worldview, and it is quite worrying that today that worldview seems to challenge some of the principles and convictions of this particular party. But then secondly, members of a party under oath, arguably, would then say, yes, I belong to this party. I am willing to basically comply, if you want, or better not, go along the guidelines of the party, become a disciplined member without necessarily sacrificing one's political consciousness. And here we are. That clash is coming out very vividly. But then thirdly, you are a high-ranking official, both party and government, which then says to everyone else that there are certain ethical guidelines that needs to be followed here, even if it means balancing what you believe in as well as what you represent both in the party as well as in government. So these are the kinds of conflicts, unfortunately, that this saga is highlighting. And sadly, we don't see restraint, let alone the kind of understanding and management that is required both publicly as well as from a statesman's point of view.
People are speculating, and there will be lots of speculation during the course of this year because of the elective conference towards the end of the year. And if it is the case that this may have something to do with the race for the leadership, then I suppose the public are being drawn into this because it is affecting government.
Yes, and both sides, if not more, would want to go out and fish for the public's sympathy, but more so directed at your rank and file members of the majority party. It's a way of saying the race has begun. Let's see who has the stamina. Let's see who has the courage and the guts, actually, to deal with real core issues. Whether those issues are about challenging the Constitution or better not, suggesting the fault lines between the people who are governed and those that are governing. It's something that will eventually shape the kinds of agenda of the contestations that these luminaries would have to engage in. Already, we are appreciating the fact that the minister has somewhat allowed her gun to go off, shooting the first shots. Whether other camps will follow suit in response to that or take another direction, it seems the Ramaphosa camp will have to rely on your organic support. Northern Cape, Limpopo, despite the internal challenges in Limpopo, who are saying, no, we stand by Cyril Ramaphosa no matter what. As for Madam Sisulu, we don't necessarily see the kind of caliber of a person that is in a position to actually deal with the current challenges that the majority party is faced with. And let's not forget, there isn't enough history to celebrate in relation to potential women within the party who are likely to take over from the men that are there in the party itself.
There's no doubt that this spat, if we can call it that, is a public relations disaster, both for the president, the minister, and the ANC. Who does it damage the most?
Peter, you are so right. It unfortunately affects the image of the majority party itself. That is, by the way, reeling from the drop in support, from the public questioning generally as to whether this party does have what it takes morally, politically, socially, and otherwise to take this country forward. So the issues of leadership, by and large, are at the center of such a contestation. But on the other hand, it's bad publicity for our government. The question is then asked, are our leaders in government able to deal with differences, be it differences of opinion, but more so understanding the kinds of responsibilities that they have before them, and most importantly, putting the interests of the poor and the disadvantaged in the forefront.
If it is to do with the election race, and as you say, you think that maybe the first shots have been fired, do you think that Minister Sisulu has done a correct calculation? Some are saying that, look, it's all very well to speak out, but pick your battles, pick the issues. Insulting the judiciary perhaps isn't a helpful one.
Yeah, precisely. Already, one should appreciate that Madame Sisulu is a woman. She comes from a respected political family, as it were. Why not appeal to the softer side of the public? Why can't you be seen as your potential mother of the nation, if we have to borrow that phrase and title very carefully? Which means you need to switch from one day appeasing the public, the next day being seen as this caring woman who has the capacity in her to actually be the mother of the nation. In the absence, by the way, of people like the late Winnie Mandela, and of course, the mother herself, and others from the Mbeki family, and all those families that represents the political aristocracy in the country. So she has that opportunity. The question is she being strategic, as your question would want us to analyze? So my understanding is, unfortunately, it seems somewhat a little bit clumsy. It's playing to too much of public gallery. It's playing to emotions without tact and without clear-cut objectives.
There is an acceptance that the ANC is divided into factions. A lot of people talk about two main ones. There could be more. And the question must then be, if it is all about the election race, is it a foregone conclusion that there's a certain faction that will gravitate towards Minister Sisulu that perhaps used to belong to the Jacob Zuma faction?
Absolutely. Social media is beginning to expose those fault lines, but more so the kinds of allegiances that speaks to the politics of the left within the ANC. So one would then argue to say, where are the social democrats within the party itself? If, of course, there are those who are on the right side of the party. And one would understand that these are some of the persons who are likely to gravitate towards the president, and they are likely to drum the message home that suggests that the 4 years that the president has spent in office are years that needed to not necessarily yield big results. They may be perceived in certain corners as wasted years, but on the other hand, on the balance of scale, these are years that needed to deal with the mess that was created before the 4 years. And it automatically became difficult for the current president to deal with those challenges and issues. But on top of that, you have a global pandemic. You have an economy that is not performing well. You have other challenges of inefficiencies, perhaps, in the public service. And then, of course, let's not forget the issue of leadership vacuum within the party. So question will be asked, what then becomes of this party in terms of dominant factions? I think the Ramaphosa camp may have a nod, but at the same time, it's early days. December, it's far-fetched. In politics, it's more like 10 years. So we have to be patient, but however, put our eyes and ears on the ground and observe where developments are likely to actually provide some kind of trajectory.
All right, we've run out of time, but perhaps you can answer this question as quickly as you can. As we start to see these things happen, and people are speculating we're probably going to see quite a few battles along the way. Is this then the year that President Ramaphosa has to assert himself, both in the party and in government, and that if he gets through the elective conference in December, that he'll be in a stronger position than at the beginning of this year?
This is it, Peter, and one would anticipate that with the Zondo reports coming up, this is likely to provide him with the necessary ammunition to actually assert himself as that leader who has the guts, the courage of deciding and persuading a highly divided NEC and a party that is not, by the way, doing well from an organizational point of view. But then, of course, he has the strength in government. Why not rely on that and hope that prosecutions will take place this year, especially to those who are seen as perpetrators of state capture, and in the process, this may very well add value into his own leadership campaign.
Professor Barry Hanyane, I am pretty sure we're going to have lots of interesting conversations in 2022. Thank you so much for your insights tonight.
Thank you, Peter.